my name's Bob Fredman. I happen to be Councillor Fredman for the Mary Valley. I live at Gildora in the heart of the Mary Valley. I've been associated with this area for more than 40 years, and it's a privilege to be here and talk about it. I got to be here. It wasn't my intention to be here, but basically it started when I finished university. I got a job with Gympie Shire Council, and I had a lot to do with the Mary Valley from that first day I was employed right through to the last day I was employed. I've worked for 3 councils, but all in the Mary Valley. Obviously this was Gympie when I came here, then it was Cooloola, and now it's Gympie. So I was a chief engineer for a long time, so I've enjoyed working here, enjoyed working on infrastructure projects. I've enjoyed a lot of interaction with a lot of people, and now I'm a councillor. I'm enjoying some of the work I did, but hoping to get a lot more done too. Infrastructure projects have been most of my life. I remember in the early 80s, the road from Bruloo to Kenilworth over the range was gravel. We had to design and build that. Just behind me here is a bridge which has got quite a history. I can remember being in charge of redecking the bridge. It was a timber bridge in the early 80s, the very early 80s. Then in 99, the 99 flood washed a couple of spans away, and that was a particularly interesting time for me. I had in the previous year to that been lucky enough to be in Tasmania, where Australia's second oldest bridge at a town called Ross in the Midlands had this amazing arch span bridge. And when this bridge washed away, we specified to the architects that we wanted a bridge that resembled the Ross Bridge, which was an arch bridge. It was very strong on my agenda because I believed Imbil deserved a beautiful bridge. And look, the long story came to an end when we got the money and we got the design we wanted, and we built it, and we actually won a national award for it as well. So the bridge is part of my story and my contribution to the valley. But as well as that, in the late 70s, we decided that Kendanga needed a swimming pool, and we designed and built the 25-metre pool at Kendanga. Then Imbil had to have a pool, so we went and designed the 25-metre pool for Imbil here and built that. Then Southside had to have a pool, so we designed and built a 25-metre pool for Southside. But realistically, I've had involvement in all roads in the area for the last 40 years and seen a lot more bitumen put down, but I'd like a whole lot more too. But basically any infrastructure, I was heavily involved in the sewering of Imbil, and certainly heavily involved with the water supply schemes and everything else that's engineering. So I feel very attached to the valley. Yeah, my association with the valley starts back in the late 70s, but I was working here but wasn't living here. I always wanted to settle. My first preference was on the banks of Yabba Creek, but that never came to be. But about 25 years ago, I was lucky enough to pick up a property on the Mary River at a place called Gildora, which is pretty well the heart of the Mary Valley. And I've raised my family there, and I'm still living there, and I love it. I've got a bit over 100 acres, and I run cattle there, and I'm in between 2 dairy farms, so I know a bit about farming in the valley too. When I first came here, there were pineapples as far as the eye could see, and if it wasn't a pineapple, it was a dairy cow. So I had vivid memories of my first couple of decades here being full of pineapples and dairy cows. The world's changed, society's changed, agriculture's changed. I think realistically this area is becoming more and more a fantastic place to live, and more of the farmers are going to be and we're being replaced by hobby farmers who run cattle. I certainly have seen dramatic changes in the rural economy. Imble's really finding its feet now. Kandanga and Amamore are coming on, and I do see a prosperous future because it's a great place to live. I've got a long association with the Rattler. I was a board member when we started the Rattler going. That was Mary Valley Heritage Railway Association, and it was made up of ex-Gympie Apexians primarily, and we kicked off the MVHR, and that ran, I think, for about 14 years or so. Since then, I haven't been involved with the resurrection of the train as the Rattler Rail Company. I am very, very keen to get a rail trail here. We've got our first little section between Imble and Bruloo, and it's a cracker. Given that I've walked a lot of, or cycled a lot of rail trails around the place, this is the best. And I think we can do just as well in a rail trail from Amamore to Imble. I think it'll be just adding another dimension, another facet of what visitors in the valley can do and what locals can do. More importantly, what locals can do. And of course, the more tourists we get, the better facilities we get, like, dare I say it, coffee shops. But all sorts of things will spring up if we get people coming here. So out of the Rattler has come the potential for a rail trail, and sure, the train for the foreseeable future, I'm sure, and I hope will keep running to Amamore, and then there'll be a rail trail for walkers or cyclists or horse riders from Amamore all the way to Bruloo. It fits in with the future I see for the valley. The valley for a long time has been a well-kept secret. People in southeast Queensland, particularly the Sunshine Coast, are only just discovering that this is a great place to visit. It looks good, it feels good, the people here are good, and it'll prosper well into the future. The proposed Traviston Crossing Dam. I can remember the day it was announced. I was sitting in a seminar out at the Forestry Training Centre at Gympie, and I was with the council, the mayor and the councillors, and my first thoughts were, is this right? Because being an engineer, I had certain thoughts about where you'd obviously put a dam and where you'd obviously not put a dam. So right from the word go, I was involved. I was council's engineer at the time. I subsequently became effectively the secretary or executive officer for the Council of Mayors, which was all the mayors who were affected. There were about 9 of them. So I had to do a lot of work in relation to our policy, what we did in terms of funding, what we did in terms of press releases and all that sort of stuff. So I was intimately involved. My property on the river wasn't in the dam footprint, so I was able to do that the job without any concerns about conflict of interest. I was just outside the footprint, and certainly I watched the debate, and I tried to enter the debate as much as we could. It was a shock to the community, and the shock has lasted a long time. Pretty well all bad, except I've got to acknowledge that quite a lot of people made an awful lot of money out of land sales. So there was a silver lining for a lucky section of the community. Everyone else who was left, it was pretty bad. Nonetheless, it's over. There's been some trauma in trying to get back to normality, but we're here now and it's good. The more I think about it, the more stories I can come up with in relation to the dam and the protests and the reaction to the community, I certainly was in the kayak and all those kayak events. In fact, you can pick my kayak because I had my dog on the front of the kayak. So I kept to the background because I was working for council, but I was there in a kayak with a dog on the front. But one thing that really stood out and which still haunts me is the ability of a lot of people in this area to rise to the occasion A number of people with science backgrounds were invaluable. A number of people with political links, a number of business people who were in all sorts of water industry applications. What was in these hills was just amazing. And those people all came out and all fought. And there wasn't a month go by when there was someone new came out with some new information, a new angle to the argument. And it just shows you that the depth in this community. And that's not just people who are in business. A lot of, I remember a couple of ladies coming forward and they read everything and studied everything, and I thought, wow, these people could have been great career ladies, but as it was, they were farmers' wives, farmers themselves, of course. But geez, there was some intelligence out there, and there was some real raw ability in the hills, and it's something that I'll never forget. I had to read everything, and yes, that's why I need glasses possibly, but I had to read everything, but the human element was the one that excited me, the way people responded, the people who came out to help, the people's ideas. It was truly amazing. I do miss the farmers. When I first came here, a lot of my time was negotiating with farmers over their road or something else. And I've got a lot of respect for people on the land. They're a unique breed. These days there aren't many farmers left. But serving the farming community was one of the pleasures of my early years as a career. Certainly there are still farmers there, and they're doing it tough because agriculture is not easy, and they're still salt of the earth people. But when I first came here, nearly everyone was a farmer or a timber worker, and it was a wonderful experience to be able to work for those sort of people. Nowadays we get a lot of other people here because it's a great rural residential area. They've got their own virtues. I do miss the farmers. As a councillor now, life's different. I come from a background which is basically a professional background. I'm now as a councillor, and I've been thinking at times about my forebears. Geez, there were some characters. I remember when I first came here, the councillors for this area were Charlie Stubbins and George Burtonshaw. And what characters they were. They didn't get paid in those days, and so it was all voluntary, but they were wonderful people. Then further down the valley we had Clive Colburn and Jean Dodd and Rob O'Farrell. A lot of good people have walked before me, and so it's a bit of an honour to be here. There have been some more recent councillors who I also greatly respect, like Julie Walker, but nonetheless time moves on, and as a councillor I am quite passionate about the valley. I'm closely attached to the valley, so I'm just doing my best. Simple as that. There are serious limitations of what you can achieve as a councillor these days, but nonetheless we have got an opportunity, I think, to excel in terms of getting this area better and making people happier. One of the great things about the valley is recreation is on our doorstep. I am a bit of an outdoors person, so I don't mind the odd bushwalk, and certainly for people who are prepared to get up and about, or who can get up and about, places like the Yabba Falls are pretty spectacular but hard to get to. Kingham Creek and Kingham Falls, great. But there's lots of other walks from the Ammermoor picnic area, from Amama Park. There are great walks there. It really is a place where, even if it's 100 metres, it's very important that everyone enjoys a walk in the bush, and there's certainly a lot of it here. In these days I do a bit less hiking than I used to, but I now enjoy cycling. So once a week, every week, for a couple of hours at least, I go for a bike ride somewhere in the valley. I stop and see anyone who's out beside the road. By geez, I've had some good conversations. Also gives me a fairly good feel for the road through my backside, because I don't have suspension. But I still enjoy every day I'm in the valley, just looking, seeing, eating. I don't mind the odd pie, and it's all here. And whether it be Bruloo or even Carter's Ridge, people forget that Carter's Ridge is part of the valley, and it's got a great history, and I like that part of the world as well. And then you've got Kandanga, Amamore, Dagan, Gildora, and of course you've even got Lagoon Pocket in those areas. So I'm lucky. Barumba Dam is a recreation hub. It's actually a recreation hub for all of Sunshine Coast. I think it's the closest water skiing facility to the Sunshine Coast. I wasn't here when it was built, but I've had a long association with it in other ways. I have been known to do my fair share of kayaking on it and fishing, and still enjoy going for a bike ride up to the dam and back. And I've been involved as well in the planning for the dam. In my opinion, it's probably not viable at this stage, but as options for water supply for the Sunshine Coast dry up, so to speak, I think the raising of Barumba Dam is a potential project that may be viable in the future. And for this community, I don't see myself any negative environmental effects, but I can see a lot of employment that comes out of it, and I love employment as well. So yeah, Barumba's here to stay, and it may even be here to get bigger. Whilst the Mary Valley's been basically recreation for me as well as work, in my early years I used to do a bit of hunting, not for animals, and I used to go to the dances at the Long Flat Hall. Oh. But I've been to lots of fetes and functions. Years ago there used to be a draft horse field day at Dagan. I'd love to see someone resurrect that again too. But been to a lot of bush dances at Kandanga. Yeah, you name it, I've been to it. Oh, good. As well as the fact that I was in Apex when we started the muster. The first couple were out at Widgie, and then we moved from Widgie up to Amamore. I think in one capacity or another I have volunteered at 39, thank you Duck, 39 musters. Oh wow. I've been...
It's going to be a big 40 this year, isn't it?
It'll be the 40th, but in some way or other I've been involved in every single muster, even if it was just driving transport cars. So yeah, recreation in the valley is very, very real in my life.